The conversation was going so perfectly well. You just finished sharing this riveting story about saving a stray cat's life outside of a TGI Fridays. But now, the conversation momentum is dying. You're on the verge of awkward silence, and you're. Damn it. In today's episode of Your Social Skills Explained, I'm going to reveal 2 reasons why we have awkward silence in conversation, and then I'm going to give you 1 solution for dealing with it. Reason 1. Expectation. Bethany Teachman, a professor at the University of Virginia in the psychology department, says that awkward moments can be boiled down to an incongruence between what is happening and what we think should be happening. In other words, when we think things should be going like this, but in reality they're appearing to us like this, that's what creates the awkward moment. Teachman argues that things can get awkward not based on what's happening in reality, but based on our expectations and a relationship to what's happening around us in reality. So it's not that we stop talking and therefore feel awkward. It's more so that we expect the conversation to keep going, and that's what has us feel awkward. Have you ever written an email to someone else and you had to pause for like a few moments just to collect your thoughts before you hit the send button, or a text message? And you wanted to make sure you were saying the right thing, and so you paused, reflected, and then you sent it off. Well, imagine putting the same kind of pressure you put on yourself in conversation when you're typing someone an email. Imagine having the belief, well, if I stop for even 2 seconds while I'm typing this out, I'm screwing up and this is going to be really awkward. You can see how much pressure we put ourselves in conversation and how it's simply unnatural. And this disconnect between our expectations and how reality shows up for us when we're talking to another person, that's what makes it awkward. Reason 2. Interpretation. So Bethany Teachman's formula for an awkward moment is unrealistic expectation plus incongruent behavior, or in other words, a violation of that expectation equals awkward moment. Therefore, the formula for an awkward silence is the expectation of being able to endlessly talk in a conversation plus a lull or a silence in that conversation equals awkward silence. So when we expect the conversation to flow perfectly from beginning to end with no gaps of silences in between, as soon as we deviate from that script, we're going to start feeling a lot of anxiety, a lot of pressure, and therefore a lot of awkwardness too. So here's my point. It's not the silence itself that creates the awkwardness. It's our interpretation of what that silence means. Just imagine going on a date with someone else, and imagine having a shock collar wrapped around your neck, and it was set to go off every time you said the word have. Imagine how that would impact your ability to carry on a conversation. It would suck, right? Because every time you're saying something, you have to carefully dance to construct a sentence that doesn't have the word have. You'd be stuck in your head the whole time, and your ability to have a relaxed, easy conversation would be downright impossible. Well, that's exactly what's going on up here when we're trying to avoid silence. Silence is our shock collar, so it impacts our ability to carry on that nice conversation, and it's inevitable. Just like trying to speak to another person while avoiding the word have, eventually the collar is going to go off. You're going to have a silence or a gap in the conversation. You're going to get shocked. So the key question here instead is, how do I take the collar off my neck? The solution is reframing. So we have 2 options for avoiding awkward silence. The first, which is not very good, is to try to construct a conversation in which there's literally no gaps in the conversation. We fill every single moment with some kind of noise. Or option 2 is to reframe what silence means. It means to take our meaning that we put into a quiet moment and change it. So we could make it mean things like, well, now it's time for me to relax. Or it's time for me to just take a deep breath and gather my thoughts. Or it's time to hang back and see what this other person can come up with. It's time to challenge them. Because once your brain realizes that silence by itself is not a bad thing, it's able to relax and ease into the conversation. It's like once the silence shows up, it's like, oh, okay, cool, silent moment. It's all good. That allows you to have far more confident conversations. So the way that I suggest going about reframing this so it actually sticks for you, is to take a page out of the exposure therapy playbook. Exposure therapy is simply exposing yourself to something you're afraid of in small increments and increasing it over time. So that if there's something you're really afraid of, you just give yourself a little bit of exposure to it and then you gradually build on it over time. So for example, if somebody is, I don't know, afraid of snakes and they're working with a therapist, the therapist might start by bringing in a tiny little snake that's totally harmless. And then as the patient got more comfortable with that, they might then start introducing more and more dangerous snakes until they get to a point where they're totally comfortable even with the most dangerous snake on the planet. They progress bit by bit. So if you have a fear of awkward silence in conversation, try this. Start by introducing awkward silences intentionally into your conversation. Halfway through sharing a story or an idea, just stop and hang back and relax and gather your thoughts. And what's great about this is you're going to realize a couple things are going to happen. One, they don't say anything, and you're going to face that fear head on and learn to get more comfortable with it and reframe it. Or two, they'll actually fill the gap for you. And it's a great way of also learning different ways to communicate to people. Because if you've never tried just intentionally trailing off in a sentence, you'll never know what kind of impact that has on another person. You'll never learn how you can use that as a tool to your advantage. And then just gradually begin building this up, scale it. So then do it with people you're less comfortable with. Do it with coworkers, acquaintances, relatives, people you rarely talk to, people you meet for the first time. And then do it earlier and earlier in the conversation. Really stretch yourself. By stretching your comfort zone in this way, when you do get hit with that silence, you're going to be ready for it, prepared for it, and emotionally, psychologically, your brain is going to be at peace with it as well. So there you have it. The top 2 reasons why we have awkward silence in conversation. Expectations, interpretations, and then one solution for dealing with it, reframing. So how do you like to handle awkward silence? Let me know, and I'll see you next time. Hey, this is Byron. I hope you enjoyed that last episode. Can you do me a quick favor? Can you go ahead and subscribe so you stay up to date every time I have a new video for you? And while I have you, I'd also like to give you a free gift. A lot of people ask me, what are my best strategies for starting conversations, keeping them going, and creating connections with other people? So what I've done is I put all of them together into one free video training. It's called the Conversation Crash Course. If you'd like to learn how to rapidly upgrade your social skills and get access to some of my best strategies in connecting with other people, go ahead and click right here, enter your email address, and then within seconds, you'll be on your way. Or you can also visit conversationblueprint.com/free course. That's conversationblueprint.com/free course, all one word. Go ahead and do that now. I'll see you over there. Have an awesome rest of your day.